Now, everyone's a photographer these days, aren't they?
Or they at least think they are.
Yeah, and I'm talking really about phones. And let's be honest, our phones are taking great pictures, and the quality of what they do, is getting better and better. And I know a lot of people, will take really good photos, and it's their introduction into photography for a lot of people, into the world of actual photography.
It
But I
is.
think there's a point there where people think that everything they can do can be done on a phone, and there's a hell of a lot that can be done on a phone. But ultimately, it's the camera that we're actually talking about. Using a real camera. But a phone is has opened up endless possibilities now for
Yes.
what to shoot and how to shoot. And I wanted to touch back on that first. But do you use your camera, your phone a lot for just general photos? Because I
Yeah.
don't.
Well, yeah, I guess I do if I'm, out with people or whatever. We do quite a few when we're at a wedding together, don't we? We all take some sort of selfies of the
Hmm.
team or in it, stuff like tends to be with a selfie stick and a phone, despite all the expensive camera equipment we have with us. We tend to do it on a phone because it's just easier, isn't it? And they're more throwaway photos, I guess. They're not, although they're good for the moment and it's a good record, they're not like special photos. They're not like your wedding photography or all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I use them generally. I use it a lot for messaging people. So the
Hmm.
landlord needs a meter reading. I'll just take a picture of it and send
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I guess that's how I
My
use mine,
studio
really.
landlord, that is, by the way. But
Yeah. I was going to say, I guess, yeah, I guess I'm the same, really. I use it for, I suppose, not for social stuff, really. For
mm,
fact, I'm talking about social house stuff, home stuff. I'm talking about social from the social media point of view. But I guess I use exactly for that, for taking readings or documenting something for someone, or to downloading receipts. Or our
yeah,
accounts are online now, so it's a matter of taking a picture of a receipt and then getting it uploaded. So that's the tool for me. Whereas a lot of people use their phone for lots of family pictures, which is fine, but a lot of people use them for trying to get some real creative stuff, don't they? Because there was a time going back, was it iPhone were doing a series of ads going back a few years ago, where on these billboards it actually said something like, this was shot on an iPhone.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we have briefly spoken about that before.
Hmm.
And yes, obviously, by I guess advertising laws, it has to be shot by an iPhone. But what they're not telling you is the lighting rig that they probably had on set to aid said iPhone. But
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, there's a lot more that can go into it. I found that when I was away and I traveled earlier this year, I went to Jordan, and I that was the first time I used my phone actually for the joy of wanting to take some pictures whilst on
mm,
holiday, because I never take a camera with me. I know you do.
yeah,
I always
I
prefer
can't
not
believe
to.
you went to
Yeah,
Petra and didn't bring a camera
yeah,
with you. I can't believe it. But anyway,
yeah. But I actually discovered my camera phone for the first time. And
mm,
when I say I really discovered it for the first time, is because I put it into manual mode and I was doing aperture settings, shutter settings, which I really enjoy doing. But I was getting some really good stuff. And the downside is I know that those pictures look great on a phone, and yes, they could enlarge up to maybe maybe
like
an 8x6,
right,
something
maybe
like that,
8 by 6,
right?
yeah.
Something like that, possibly. But the quality is not going to be there. Okay, and I don't plan to blow any of them up big, which is why I didn't take a camera with me. Because I'm much like a lot of other people when it comes to family pictures and home stuff. I'll look at pictures online on sorry, on a screen rather than sort of
Mm,
looking at printed images. Although I find that quite sad that that's the case. But I came across an article where a photographer went out and shot some pictures of Matt Smith, and the photographer in question was Greg Williams. Now, this is going back quite some time ago, because this was an article in an old GQ magazine that I came across, and the photographer in question, Greg Williams, he's well-known photographer. He's gone out and shot everyone from Daniel Craig to Brad Pitt, Tom Hardy. He's shot a lot of the British GQ covers along the way. But he was given an iPhone a few years ago, and I think looking at the article, it says an iPhone 12 Pro Max. So now
okay,
I think that's
so hang on. Just to make sure everyone's aware, this isn't the
Mm.
general iPhone. This is like the max version of it, which most
Okay.
people don't have.
Right.
You know, I haven't got one. My iPhone is just, I mean, this is a 13, I think. I don't even know what it is, but it's certainly not the Pro Max. I haven't got a zoom on here, not an optical zoom anyway. It's just got the 2 lenses,
Mm.
because they get really big and they won't fit in my car. Well, in the compartment where I put my phones for the sat nav, so it's kind of pointless for me. Plus, I've got a big camera anyway.
Yeah. So that's interesting because I didn't know that was the case. iPhone 12 Pro Max. So I just thought it was one of the standard ones. So you're talking at the time it came out, was it pretty much top end, would you say?
Oh, it would be the top of top end. So I
Right.
think I'm not an expert on it, but I think there's 3 versions of, say, like my phone. So there's my phone, and then I think you got the iPhone Pro and the iPhone Pro Max, something like that. I think there's 3. It could be 2. I can't.
Right.
But I do remember looking at the prices and going, not a chance.
Yeah.
So,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
But if you're making a living out of it, I guess.
Yeah.
It would, you know?
So Greg Williams was trying this camera out, and he took out this actor for some photos. And what he does in the article, he talks about, he went out for about half an hour, and he goes on to give his tips and advice on how you can get the most out of your camera phone. And I wanted to go through those. Looking at the images that he shot, they all look like fairly standard images. They all look good because you can tell the photographer, it's all about the posing and what he's getting, you know, Matt Smith to do and everything. But one of the things that he does talk about is he says I always favor timeless to trendy.
Yeah.
It says, when I was starting out, I was absolutely obsessed with Magnum photographers and the golden age of cinema, Eve Arnold, Elliot Erwitt, and everyone who took those beautiful black and white photos from the movie sets. And Marlene Dietrich springs to mind, some stunning images of her, as it were, from so many of those cinema legends, shot in black and white in those days. It says, it goes on to say, because I don't like my shots much and the technology is so good now, you can create modern day classics in monochrome with the right know-how. He says, I use manual exposure here because if you rely on any phone's auto exposure, it would have turned all that black into gray.
Yeah,
that's one of the things
that's what all camera meters do, though. I mean, it doesn't matter what camera you've got. It, you know, you stick it on auto, it'll, you know, it goes for medium gray, doesn't it? It's zone 7, I think, in the zone system, zone 5.
Yeah,
7, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you know, if you do a picture of something black, like, you know, a black coat or something, it will come out gray.
Yeah. And looking through the pictures, the thing that sort of strikes me the most is composition. Really, that's what makes the pictures. And he does actually go on to say in the next part of it, he says, I compose in lots of different ways, but one thing I love is that sense point perspective when everything's just coming straight towards you. Now, you know, I've said this before, but when somebody says to me, oh, I love your photos, how did you take that? It's such a good photo. And that it could be a picture of a park bench, but they'll say, oh, how did you take that? And I always say it's just because I've just looked at it more. I've just looked at it differently. I haven't just gone and just taken a click picture. I've actually thought about, you know, what's going to look good, what's going to be the best composition, what's going to be the best perspective. So I'm just looking at things in more detail, and my experience allows me to do that as well. So I can make a park bench look a hell of a lot better than most other people would, say, with a camera, because I know sort of what I'm looking for. And it's not because it's a different park bench, it's exactly the same park bench, but it's a far better photo. And the answer usually to that is composition is really what's on it. Yes, you could go into focus, you can go into depth of field, you can go into all of those things, but essentially it's the actual composition of an image. And so he was saying that on the iPhone, he liked playing with the iPhone's brilliance filter on these kind of shots, as it brightens up areas that are a little too dark. So he's put this thing into manual mode, which is really what I did when I took when I went off to Jordan, and I was really able to tweak the camera settings to exactly how I wanted the photos, and I was able to create some beautiful silhouettes, some beautifully overexposed images, slightly underexposed, some perfectly exposed images, dropping things in and out of focus where I wanted to. It felt like using a DSLR, you know, because I was familiar with the settings. That's the thing. I think most people, that if you give them the camera, they put it into manual mode. I'm talking about your average person here, somebody who hasn't got any experience in photography, will look at their manual setting in their cameras and think, well, I'm not going to use that, and they'll just leave it on auto and just click, and the cameras do take perfectly good pictures.
Mm.
So he gives us his 8 tips for the perfect photo. And so I'm just going to read through those. I don't think they're in any particular order. So I'll just start with number 1 here. And he says, empathy is everything. So tell me whether, what your take is on this, Mark. And he says, more often than not, I'm an element within my photos. So you sense an interaction that made for a genuine, authentic moment. So you sense an interaction that's made for a genuine, authentic moment. So Matt's been a mate of mine for a while, but some people are deeply introverted people. So you can't be bantering away with them. The biggest skill a photographer can have is empathy and knowing when to shut up and when to talk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that's half the skill as social photographers, that we, you have to relate to different people. When I do my family stuff, I have to relate to a 2-year-old, and I also have to relate to a 92-year-old. That
Mm.
it's about having that, and you're right. You can spot straight away the people who are up for the banter and the people who maybe not so. And the whole idea of that kind of chit chat is to make people feel a bit more relaxed.
Mm.
But if they are, like it says, introverted, going in a jokily and bantery is probably going to make that person feel worse. So
Mm.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
You need to read the room, as it were.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, and a lot of people talk about this with street photography, and they might see some great pictures from somewhere and say, "Wow, why is my street photography not like this?" And it's usually because of the interaction that people have had, the interaction that a photographer's had with the subject. I've gone out and done street photography, and I've spoken to my subjects before I've actually taken any photos of them. I've gone up to them, just had a chat with them. Hey, I'm doing some photos. I tell this to students: talk to people. Don't sneakily take photos. Actually, talk to people and engage them, and they'll take an interest in you, and then you'll be more interested in them.
Do you
So
worry that you lose a bit of authenticity with that, though?
not at all, because after a while, once I say to them, I say, right, all I want you to do is just carry on what you do and ignore me. And then after a few seconds, they've gone. It's gone completely. I'm there. They've completely forgotten about me because I'm now not a barrier for them at all. And because I've spoken to them initially without my camera, I've just got my camera on my bag or it's strapped around my back. I'm telling them what I'm doing. I don't chat to them for ages. I keep it quite short, quite snappy, and I'll say, look, I'm really sorry you're busy, but just take a few
Quite
pictures.
snappy.
All right. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great. I'll step away. I'll step forward. There's a way of doing it, and you get that authenticity, but you get it even better than had you been trying to do it, because you have just engaged with that person, and that person now for a while is going to play up to the camera, but they do forget. Suddenly they've forgotten. If you're good at what you do and you're quick, they'll forget that you're actually there.
Mm, mm,
Number 2, he says, lean into the camera. It says, when you connect with someone over the camera, that changes everything. Whenever I used to shoot my mum, she'd pull her smile back into her neck, giving the classic double chin pose. You don't just smile with your mouth, though. You smile with your face and your eyes. Get people to lean forward, bring them to life, whether that's with a joke or whatever. Most photos are a bit like holiday photos, in that they are guard down and relaxed. And again, it's having that interaction with somebody. That's really what that's about.
Yeah, again, I mean, it's pretty much linked to the first one, really. I mean, I guess there's a bit of positional thing going on to stop people doing that chin thing. Yeah, I mean, if people are relaxed, then they won't do that stiff smile. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and this is where I've always said that the best photographers create images. Yes, there's always going to be the spontaneous photos that you just don't know that are going to happen. I agree with all of that, but the best photographers they do create photos. So number 3, stick with it. He says, there have definitely been times when I've shot an actress who's at the end of a bloody awful day's press, and the last thing she needs to do is giggle at me over the camera. There are others when I've been politely asked to bugger off, but I keep persevering and got lovely pictures that the person was really grateful for. You've got to do it with a smile and a really positive attitude. Stick with it, do it with a smile, really positive attitude. Yeah, nothing could be, like more accurate than that. That's just so, you know what it's like when we've been on a shoot all day and when we've been working with people, you've still got to make that, you've still got to have that energy and enthusiasm, or at least they need to see that enthusiasm and that energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And being polite, I mean, you know, I don't do a lot of the celebrity stuff, so I can imagine if an actor or musician has been doing press all day, then the last thing they want to do is another blooming photo. And we get that with wedding clients as well, don't we? There's a time when you can just tell they've had enough of having a photograph taken, and you just got to leave them be for a bit.
Yeah.
Because otherwise because you're just trying to get the best for them, and deep down so do they. But it can be quite overbearing if you're not careful, and if you just constantly do it, they're not. Photos are only part of their day. It's for a photographer, it's the complete day. It's all about photos. But for the bride and groom, it's not. It's only part of their day, and the other part of that day is having a good time with their mates and family. So yeah, you do have to read it sometimes. If you've been doing it's that very intense part, isn't there, after the wedding ceremony, when you're doing all the group shots and trying to get them done as quickly as possible. Uncle Jeff is probably either on the toilet or at the bar, and you've got to find them. And you've been doing that for about 20 minutes, half an hour. Then you do the romantics, which might be another 20 minutes, half an hour. So it's an hour of them just having photos. And of course, if you were with them doing getting ready shots, then you were constantly buzzing around them there as well, possibly doing a few post shots there. So by the time the ceremony's done, that could be like 3 or 4 hours of photography.
That's right. Yeah, it's intense.
And you got to kind of go, you know what? They probably need a break from this. And you just got to read it again. It's like I said before, reading the room. I guess that's the same with celebs as well. Sometimes just let them have a drink or a coffee or something, and then do it.
And pick up on it. Yeah,
I guess. I mean, it's a bit different with celebs, isn't it? Because of the timings.
Yeah. So number 4 of the it says move to find the right angle, and he says one of the first things I teach in my photography course is people getting people to move. Right? It says you can have this horrible thing where someone sees a picture and they'll zoom in, tweak a bunch of stuff, and they don't get up. Once you're moving about and have learned how to read light, you're really thinking like a photographer. Again, it's so true. This, people will just they'll see a picture, think I'll take a picture of that, and then what they'll do is they'll create their image by zooming in and out. Remember you're using a phone here, so you're just pinching on the screen in and out and whatever. But it doesn't mean that they've got the best angle just by zooming in. Everyone thinks, I'm going to zoom in as closely as I can. People will not move. They seem rooted to the spot. The camera will do everything for you. The camera will autofocus for you. It will set your exposure for you. You can set it on auto ISO. It will put all your settings right. But the one thing it won't tell you to do is where to take the picture from. It won't say, oh, hang on a minute. If I was you, I'd move to the other side of the road, or I'd move a little bit to the left. I'd move a little bit to the right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Right. So basically, to move with your camera, and move with your phone. That's what this is about. And it says number 5, the best camera is the one you have with you. Of course, it is.
I mean, we've heard that before. I mean, he's not the first to say that.
I take my photos on my iPhone all the time, he says, because you can do so much with it now. I recreated Muhammad Ali's underwater boxer shot with Nicholas Hoult on my phone. I can shoot 300 frames in a row of someone running towards me, but a lot of the time it's simply the thing I've got with me. So I see a picture and my iPhone is ready for it. The fact that you can work in lower light is great now, and the added exposure control is a game changer. Well, I found that out on my Samsung that I've got, and it's once you go into that manual setting, you realize that there is so much that you can do with it again. But it's being familiar, and I could do it really quickly because obviously I could flick it into manual and I saw shutter, aperture, ISO, and I knew what to do with it straight away. But for some people, they may not know that. But once you do, as he says, the exposure control is a game changer. Number 6, try to take photos that will last. It says a great photo is something you want to go back to and look at more than once. I can look at pictures and smell things. You want to look at a picture and laugh or feel someone a bit better. One of the things I've always said, Marcus, particularly when it's family photos, you can go somewhere great, like, going to Petra and all over Jordan, seeing some great things. And I took a lot of views, some lovely landscapes. Okay. And lovely views, right? However, the one thing I didn't do was go crazy on that. I made sure that I had some family with me. That the family were in the pictures, because that's what this trip was about. It was a family holiday, it's a family trip, it's a family journey, this was. And having somebody in those photos, in those great views, makes them even more special. In amongst them, there was the odd few that were dotted around,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
mean, I have to say, I don't find. I mean, I haven't got the Pro Max or whatever it was that guy had. I tend to find that because the phone's lens is so wide, I don't think it tends to do the landscapes that well, really. I think cityscapes maybe a bit more because there's more things going on and stuff. But if you're just doing a landscape like you were in a desert, which is pretty flat, and
yeah.
I don't know, I tend to find the iPhones, well, phones in general, they don't really tend to do it justice, I find. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me.
Oh, they don't. I think most cameras. I think when you're in that, when you're somewhere that's just incredible. It's being there and having that experience.
Yeah.
And that's quite. You know what? I think a lot of people miss that experience because they're too engrossed in their phones these days. They've got this. They're one of the most amazing places in the world, wherever you could be, and they're viewing the whole thing on their phone.
Well, it's
People
not
will
just that,
view.
because after they take the photo, they then got to stick it on Instagram straight away.
I've seen the mother of the bride countless times watching her watching her daughter walk down the aisle, and she's filming it, and she's watching her daughter walking, but she's watching it on her phone. She's not watching her actual daughter walking down the aisle.
And especially when you've employed videographers.
And I find that really sad that the phone just got up straight away, and that you don't have to shoot anything and everything. And I think that it just becomes a habit. You know what it's like? We see it at weddings where people don't put their phones away. The phones are just in their hands, all the time. It's just attached to them somehow. And so I think that that's where the phones have been detrimental to the experience of so many things. So number 7, follow the greats. He says on Instagram, and just look at photographers, great photographers, people that you like, and try and get some ideas from them to see what they do. So basically he's saying learn from others. Number 8, the last one, he says sometimes lo-fi works best. He says I do much of my work on my own in available light and often in an incredibly short space of time. And we know that feeling, right? If it's at the Academy Awards, you might have 5 or 10 seconds to take a shot. At a hotel before the premiere of a film, you might have even 90 seconds. I think I've said this before. Going back many years ago, I had to go do some photos of Katie Price at an event, and there was a group of about 4 or 5 photographers. We were working for the PR agency, and they said, and we could go up to her individually and get a photo of her. And basically she gave me no more than about 5 seconds, and that was it. I'd hardly had time to put my camera up, bring my camera up to the eye, get the photo, and she was saying, right, that's it, that's your lot. It was just, and I got what I needed, and luckily also because I wasn't the first one that stepped forward, I saw somebody else go before me. So you had to just whack it straight out without any thought or anything. At this year's Oscars, I shot Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin, that's it, yeah. And Rooney Mara in an apartment block, stoop outside the Netflix party.
This wasn't Cam, by the way. This is
No, this is yeah, because it was just me, them, my camera, and a box of vegan burgers. The paparazzis who were just across the street didn't see us. It was such a lo-fi shoot that no one noticed, and it became the photo of the night. And not everything has to be planned and pre-planned, does it? That's they're the spontaneous moments, aren't they? They're the ones that happen, outside the
I am questioning the vegan burgers, but never mind.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So anyway, some interesting stuff. I think everyone's got some tips of how to use their phones and get better photos. But explore the manual settings on your phones. They're worth doing
as well, though. I mean, I think that list isn't really necessarily about iPhones or Samsung phones.
Oh no, it's not. No,
I'd suggest a lot of that is general stuff you need to do anyway.
Yeah.
Whether you're using a DSLR or a drone or whatever it is, there's a lot of stuff in there that actually you need to, looking up the greats and, the sort of reading the room kind of stuff and all that, I think that's just general. I think even in the film days, I think you needed to know all of that. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, despite it being iPhones and that, the basics are still the same as when I was learning film during my A levels, just getting more into the distant past as more than I'd like. But yeah, so yeah, it's good. I mean, like I said, the phone that he's using is quite It's not the basic model, it's not the standard model, it's definitely the next one
It's a
up.
top end one, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, it
Good
is. But I still reckon that if we turned up to a wedding with nothing but iPhones, I think the bride and groom might have something to say.
Exactly.